Today, we delve into the dark corners of America's criminal underworld to examine 5 of the FBI's most wanted fugitives as of January 2026. These are not ordinary criminals. These are individuals who have committed acts so heinous, orchestrated schemes so elaborate, and evaded justice so skillfully that they have earned a place on one of law enforcement's most notorious lists. The FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list was established in March 1950, a collaboration between FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover and a news editor seeking to highlight the Bureau's toughest cases. Since its inception, 537 fugitives have been placed on this list, and 500 have been captured or located, a remarkable 93% success rate, with 163 of those captures directly resulting from public assistance. In this documentary, we will explore 5 compelling cases. Some represent fugitives who have recently been captured after years on the run, while others remain at large, living in shadows, constantly looking over their shoulders. Each story is a testament to the persistence of law enforcement and the devastating impact these criminals have had on their victims and communities. The cases we will examine today are Alejandro Rosales Castillo, the decade-long manhunt that ended in Mexico. Ryan Wedding, from Olympic glory to drug kingpin. Yulan Adnai Archaga Carias, the MS-13 terrorist leader. Ruja Ignatova, the cryptoqueen who vanished with billions. Mary Carol McDonnell, the true crime producer turned fraudster. Let us begin our journey into the heart of these extraordinary criminal cases. On August 17, 2016, in the quiet woods of Cabarrus County, North Carolina, authorities made a grim discovery. The body of 23-year-old Truckwan Sandy Lila lay among the trees, a victim of brutal violence. What investigators would soon uncover was a story of betrayal, young love turned deadly, and a manhunt that would span nearly a decade and cross international borders. Sandy Lila was a young woman with her whole life ahead of her. She worked at a Charlotte restaurant where she met Alejandro Rosales Castillo, who was just 17 years old at the time of the murder. The two had a relationship that would end in tragedy. According to FBI investigators, Sandy had lent Alejandro money, a gesture of trust that would ultimately lead to her death. The evening of August 16, 2016, would be the last time anyone would see Sandy alive. By the next morning, her body had been discovered in a wooded area, the victim of what authorities determined to be first-degree murder. The investigation moved quickly. Sandy's vehicle was found abandoned at a bus station in Phoenix, Arizona, hundreds of miles from the crime scene. This discovery would prove crucial. U.S. Customs and Border Protection footage told a chilling story. On August 16, 2016, surveillance cameras captured 17-year-old Alejandro Castillo crossing the border from Nogales, Arizona, into Mexico. He was not alone. Amia Feaster, another teenager allegedly involved in the crime, had also fled south. The two had taken Sandy's vehicle and made a desperate run for the border. For months, the trail seemed to go cold. Then, in a turn of events, Amia Feaster turned herself in to authorities in Aguascalientes, Mexico. She was extradited to Mecklenburg County and faced charges including possession of a stolen vehicle and accessory after the fact. But Alejandro Castillo remained at large. On November 2, 2016, the District Court of North Carolina issued a state arrest warrant charging Castillo with first-degree murder. But a state warrant was not enough. On February 10, 2017, the case went federal. The U.S. District Court for the Western District of North Carolina issued a federal arrest warrant. charging Castillo with unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. This federal warrant would prove crucial in the international pursuit. On October 24, 2017, Alejandro Rosales Castillo was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, becoming the 516th person to earn this dubious distinction. A reward of up to $250,000 was offered for information leading to his capture. The FBI, working with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, pursued leads tirelessly. They believed Castillo was hiding in Aguascalientes, Mexico, where he allegedly had family connections. For nearly 10 years, Alejandro Castillo lived in Mexico under the radar. FBI Charlotte Special Agent in Charge James C. Barnacle Jr. would later comment that Castillo likely believed he would never be captured, living what appeared to be a normal life south of the border. But the FBI never gave up. Task force officers in Charlotte worked countless hours, developing leads, tracking movements, and piecing together the puzzle of Castillo's whereabouts. As the years passed, the case remained a priority. Sandy's family endured nearly a decade without justice, marking each birthday, each holiday, without their daughter and loved one. The case became personal for the investigators involved, a reminder that behind every file number and wanted poster is a real family seeking answers. On January 16, 2026, the patience and persistence of law enforcement finally paid off. In Pachuca, Hidalgo, Mexico, hundreds of miles from where investigators originally believed Castillo was hiding, Mexican authorities, coordinating with the FBI's law enforcement attaché office in Mexico City, moved in. The operation involved collaboration with Mexico's Agencia de Investigación Criminal Interpol-vetted team and the Secretaría de Seguridad y Protección Ciudadana. The arrest was conducted without incident. The now 27-year-old Castillo was taken into custody and transported to Mexico City, where he awaited extradition proceedings to North Carolina. After 3,438 days on the run, nearly a decade, Alejandro Rosales Castillo's time as a fugitive had come to an end. FBI Director Kash Patel announced the capture with pride, noting that Castillo was the fifth 10 most wanted fugitive captured under the current administration since the previous year, more than the entire previous 4 years combined. Patel praised the work of the Charlotte team, FBI Legate Mexico, and Mexican authorities, emphasizing that when law enforcement receives proper support, results follow. Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Chief Estela D. Patterson emphasized that this joint effort sends a clear message: those who commit violent crimes cannot outrun justice. No matter how far they flee, no matter how long they hide, dedicated investigators will continue to pursue them. For Sandy Lila's family, the arrest brought a measure of closure after years of waiting. While nothing can bring Sandy back, knowing that her accused killer would finally face justice provided some solace. As Agent Barnacle noted, Sandy's family had begun another new year without her, and while the pain would never fully heal, at least now they could begin to see justice served. The case of Alejandro Rosales Castillo serves as a powerful reminder that the FBI's 10 most wanted list is not merely symbolic. It is a tool that works, bringing international attention to cases that might otherwise grow cold. Through persistence, international cooperation, and the determination of investigators who refuse to give up, even the most elusive fugitives can be brought to justice.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kash Patel, the Director of the FBI. Today, once again, thanks to President Trump's brilliant leadership and relentless support of law enforcement, we are here today to announce another record-breaking year for the FBI and specifically for the community here in Charlotte. Thank you also to Attorney General Pam Bondi's leadership of the Department of Justice. She has championed victims her entire career, and she never forgets them or her families. And the combination of that is what led us here today. The FBI just a week ago captured, Mr. Alejandro Castillo in Mexico, one of the top 10 most wanted fugitives on the FBI's most wanted list. He has been on that list for over a decade, evading law enforcement. And to put that in perspective, how much effort goes into this, it is an entire interagency operation from the FBI to the state police, to the local police, to the U.S. attorneys, to the district attorneys, and to the Mexican authorities. That is the only way to bring justice for Sandy Lee, who tragically and brutally lost her life so many years ago at the hands of this brutal monster. I want a special thanks to the Mexican government, President Scheinbaum, Secretary Harfuch, and a special thanks to Ambassador Ron Johnson down in Mexico, representing our interests in Mexico City. A tremendous partner. When I was down there just this week, offering our support and meeting with the individuals and the leaders down there, it truly hit me how much work goes into this kind of operation and what it takes to build a safe and secure America and what it takes to bring justice to the victims and the families across the country. And together, under President Trump's leadership, we have done just that. This year has been a historic year for the FBI. We've had 67,000 arrests this year alone. That's a 200% increase. That's because these guys work with those guys, work with everybody across the country to make it happen.
The story of Ryan Wedding is one of the most dramatic falls from grace in the history of the FBI's most wanted list. His journey from representing his country on the world's biggest athletic stage to becoming one of America's most wanted drug traffickers is a tale of ambition twisted into criminality, of Olympic glory corrupted into organized crime. Ryan James Wedding was born with athletic talent coursing through his veins. Growing up in Canada, he developed a passion for snowboarding that would eventually take him to the pinnacle of international competition. In 2002, at the Salt Lake City Winter Olympics, the 21-year-old Wedding represented Canada in the parallel giant slalom event, competing against the world's best snowboarders on sport's grandest stage. While Wedding did not medal at the Olympics, the experience of competing at that level, of representing his country, should have been the launching pad for a successful career in sports or business. Instead, it would become a distant memory, overshadowed by the dark path he would later choose. Ryan Wedding's first known brush with serious crime came in 2010, when he was convicted in the United States of conspiracy to distribute cocaine. Federal records show he was sentenced to prison, serving time for his role in drug trafficking. Most people would see this as a cautionary tale, a warning to change their path. Ryan Wedding saw it differently. He saw it as a learning experience, a chance to understand the system he would later exploit on a massive scale. After his release from prison, Wedding did not reform. Instead, he went underground, building what federal prosecutors would later describe as a sophisticated multinational drug trafficking organization. This was no small-time operation. Wedding was operating at the highest levels of the cocaine trade, working under the protection of one of Mexico's most powerful and violent criminal organizations, the Sinaloa Cartel. Wedding operated under numerous aliases that reflected his status and reputation in the criminal underworld. He was known as El Jefe, the boss. He was called Giant, Public Enemy, James Conrad King, and Jesse King. Each name told a story of his evolution from athlete to crime lord. According to federal indictments unsealed in 2024, Wedding ran a network that trafficked cocaine from Colombia through Mexico and Southern California, ultimately distributing it to Canada and other locations throughout the United States. The operation moved cocaine by the ton, using sophisticated methods to avoid detection. Wedding allegedly used semi-trucks to transport massive quantities of drugs across international borders, hidden among legitimate cargo. But Wedding's operation was not just about moving drugs. It was about maintaining power through violence and intimidation. Federal prosecutors charged that Wedding orchestrated multiple murders to further his drug trafficking enterprise. These were not crimes of passion or desperate acts. They were calculated eliminations of rivals, witnesses, and anyone who posed a threat to his operation. The charges against Wedding read like a catalog of the worst crimes a criminal organization can commit. Beyond drug trafficking, he faced charges of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and money laundering. Prosecutors alleged that Wedding used violence as a business tool, ordering killings with the same cold calculation that a legitimate businessman might approve a budget. One particularly heinous aspect of his alleged crimes was the murder of a federal witness. Killing a witness is not just murder, it is an attack on the justice system itself, an attempt to intimidate others who might cooperate with law enforcement. It is a crime that demonstrates complete contempt for the rule of law. The money laundering operation was equally sophisticated. Wedding and his organization needed to hide the proceeds from cocaine sales, millions upon millions of dollars that could not simply be deposited in banks without raising red flags. They allegedly used a complex web of transactions, shell companies, and international transfers to legitimize their drug money. When federal prosecutors unsealed the indictment against Wedding, he was already in the wind. The FBI, working with the Los Angeles field office under Assistant Director Akil Davis, launched an intensive international manhunt. Wedding was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, a designation that brought global attention to the case. The U.S. Department of State offered a staggering reward of $10 million for information leading to Wedding's arrest, one of the highest rewards ever offered. The FBI added its own $50,000 reward, bringing the total bounty to over $10 million. This enormous reward reflected both the severity of Wedding's alleged crimes and the difficulty in locating him. The investigation was truly international in scope. FBI agents worked with authorities in Mexico, Canada, Colombia, and the Dominican Republic. They tracked financial transactions, monitored communications, and developed sources in multiple countries. The manhunt lasted more than a year, with investigators following leads across continents. On January 23, 2026, the manhunt reached its dramatic conclusion. After weeks of high-stakes negotiations, Ryan Wedding surrendered to authorities at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. The surrender was carefully orchestrated, involving the FBI's elite hostage rescue team, which played a crucial role in securing Wedding and transporting him back to the United States. FBI Director Kash Patel, who happened to be in Mexico City on a pre-planned trip, was present when Wedding was apprehended. In a press conference held in Ontario, California, upon returning to the United States, Patel announced the capture, calling it a direct result of pressure applied by Mexican and U.S. law enforcement working in close coordination. The U.S. Embassy in Mexico praised the cooperation that led to the surrender. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the arrest on social media, writing that at her direction, Department of Justice agents and the FBI had apprehended yet another member of the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. Wedding was flown to the United States, where he would face justice for his alleged crimes. Wedding's arrest was only part of a much larger operation. According to Akil Davis of the FBI's Los Angeles field office, 36 people had been arrested in connection with the drug trafficking organization. Authorities had seized large volumes of drugs, weapons, and cash. They also confiscated millions of dollars worth of assets, including automobiles, motorcycles, artwork, and jewelry, the trappings of a criminal empire. But the investigation was not over. The FBI was offering rewards of up to $2 million for information, leading to additional arrests and convictions. In any criminal organization of this size, there are always more players to identify, more connections to trace, more justice to be served. Canadian authorities also had charges pending against Wedding. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police announced they had collaborated closely with the FBI during the investigation and praised the capture as a great day for public safety in Canada. Ryan Wedding's story is particularly tragic because of what he once represented. Olympic athletes are supposed to embody the best qualities of human achievement: discipline, perseverance, fair play, and respect for rules. Wedding had achieved something that less than 1% of 1% of people ever accomplish: competing in the Olympic Games. Yet somehow, this man who once stood as a symbol of excellence descended into a world of violence, drugs, and death. His case serves as a reminder that talent and opportunity are not enough. Without a moral compass, without respect for human life and the law, even the most privileged can become the most dangerous. As Wedding awaits trial for his alleged crimes, he faces the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. The Olympic rings that once symbolized his achievement now stand in stark contrast to the prison walls that may become his final home. His story will be remembered not for the athlete he was, but for the criminal he allegedly became.
From world acclaim at the Olympic Games,
Canadian rider Ryan Wedding,
to the FBI's 10 most wanted list, now captured and shackled, the manhunt for Ryan Wedding is over.
He's a modern-day El Chapo. He is a modern-day Pablo Escobar, and he thought he could evade justice.
No longer the daring athlete snowboarding the slopes for Canada. The 44-year-old surrendered in Mexico City Thursday night. Authorities say Wedding built a vast criminal drug trafficking enterprise that pumped 60 metric tons of cocaine into the U.S. He is also accused of conspiring to kill a witness.
Wedding murdered one of the witnesses in his cases, thinking that it would prevent him from being brought to justice, and that did not work.
The FBI confiscated parts of his fortune, including high-end collectibles.
We seized the Mercedes-Benz, estimated over $15 million. We seized dozens of motorcycles worth approximately $40 million, and other valuable artwork and jewelry.
Wedding had used aliases including Giant and El Jefe. Authorities suspected he altered his appearance while hiding out in Mexico for a decade. In November, the Justice Department increased the reward to $15 million, but declined to say if a payout is due.
To go down to Mexico to find a guy who's been on the lam for multiple years for some of the most egregious crimes on planet Earth takes an interagency-wide effort.
Monday afternoon, Wedding will be in federal court in Los Angeles for his first appearance on multiple charges that relate to what officials call his billion-dollar cocaine operation. Tom?
Among all the criminals profiled in this documentary, perhaps none represents a more significant ongoing threat to public safety than Yulan Adne Archaga Carrias. Known by the alias Porky, this 43-year-old Honduran national is not just wanted, he is hunted. Not just by law enforcement, but by a nation determined to dismantle one of the most violent criminal organizations in the Western Hemisphere, MS-13, which has now been designated as a foreign terrorist organization by the United States government. Before we can understand the significance of Archaga Carrias, we must first understand MS-13, officially known as Mara Salvatrucha. This transnational criminal gang originated in Los Angeles in the 1980s, formed by Salvadoran immigrants fleeing civil war in their home country. What began as a street gang has evolved into something far more sinister: a sophisticated criminal enterprise operating across multiple countries with a reputation for extreme violence. The gang's motto is chilling: mata, viola, controla, kill, rape, control. This is not mere rhetoric. It is a mission statement that MS-13 members carry out with brutal efficiency. The organization is involved in drug trafficking, human smuggling, murder for hire, robbery, and a range of other violent crimes. Their signature is the machete, and their calling card is violence so extreme it is designed to terrify entire communities into submission. MS-13 has established a presence across the United States, with strongholds in cities from Los Angeles to New York, from Houston to Washington, D.C. The FBI has identified Houston as a particular hotspot for MS-13 presence and violence. But the gang's reach extends far beyond American borders, with significant operations throughout Central America, where they effectively control territory and populations through fear. Yulan Adne Archaga Carias, born February 13, 1982, in Honduras, rose through the ranks of MS-13 to become the highest-ranking member of the organization in his home country. According to federal charges, Archaga Carias did not merely lead MS-13 in Honduras, he controlled it. He allegedly directed the gang's criminal activities, coordinated drug trafficking operations, ordered murders, and provided support and resources to MS-13 operations throughout Central America and the United States. Standing just 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighing approximately 160 pounds, Archaga Carias may not cut an imposing physical figure. But his power comes not from his stature, but from his willingness to use extreme violence and his position atop a criminal organization with thousands of members. He is described as armed and extremely dangerous, though his real danger lies in his ability to command others to carry out violence on his behalf. The charges against Archaga Carias paint a picture of a man at the center of a vast criminal web. In 2021, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York filed a superseding indictment charging him with racketeering conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, and possession and conspiracy to possess machine guns. These charges only scratch the surface of his alleged criminal activities. According to prosecutors, Archaga Carias was responsible for supporting multi-ton loads of cocaine moving through Honduras to the United States. He allegedly provided firearms, narcotics, and cash to MS-13 members operating within the United States, creating a pipeline that connected the gang's Central American operations with its American cells. This made him not just a criminal but a national security threat. But the drug trafficking was only part of the operation. Archaga Carias is also charged with ordering and participating in murders of rival gang members and others associated with MS-13. These were not isolated incidents, but part of a systematic campaign of violence designed to maintain control, eliminate threats, and send messages to anyone who might oppose the organization. In February 2020, Honduran authorities had Archaga Carias in custody, preparing to bring him before a court. He was facing charges related to the murder of 2 Honduran prosecutors who had been investigating MS-13 activities, a clear example of how the gang eliminates threats to its operations. It should have been a moment of justice. Instead, it became a demonstration of MS-13's power and reach. As Archaga Carias was being transported to the courthouse in El Progreso, northern Honduras, an MS-13 squad launched a brazen assault. The operation was meticulously planned. Barely any security guards accompanied the prisoner, and military police had not been given prior notice of the transport, a serious breach of protocol that suggested either incompetence or corruption. Security footage captured the audacity of the escape. 2 groups of men dressed in military police uniforms arrived at the courthouse. The first group escorted what appeared to be a prisoner in handcuffs, a decoy designed to confuse security. The second group escorted a man dressed in a black tunic, the type typically used to protect the identity of witnesses or victims. But this time, the tunic concealed weapons and ammunition. The MS-13 squad barged into the courthouse in a hail of bullets. Several officers were killed in the assault. And just like that, Yulan Adne Archaga Carrias vanished, returning to the shadows of the criminal underworld. It was not just an escape. It was a message about MS-13's power and its willingness to attack the judicial system itself. On November 3, 2021, Yulan Adne Archaga Carrias was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, becoming the 526th person to earn this designation. He replaced Robert William Fisher, whose case had gone cold after nearly 20 years on the list. The FBI initially offered a reward of up to $100,000 for information leading to Archaga Carrias' capture. But as the investigation progressed and the U.S. government designated MS-13 as a foreign terrorist organization, the stakes and the reward increased dramatically. In April 2025, the U.S. Department of State's Transnational Organized Crime Rewards Program announced a new reward of up to $5 million for information leading to Archaga Carrias' arrest and conviction in any country. Attorney General Pamela Bondi made the announcement personally, declaring that this terrorist leader can no longer be allowed to live free, as MS-13's evil devastates communities in America and throughout the Western Hemisphere. She called on anyone with information to come forward. This was not just about catching a criminal, it was about dismantling a terrorist organization. FBI Director Kash Patel emphasized that dismantling and ultimately eliminating MS-13 continues to be one of the FBI's highest priorities. He vowed that the Bureau would not stop until that mission is complete. Working alongside dedicated law enforcement partners, Patel promised that the FBI would find Archaga Carrias, calling him a terrorist whose reign of terror at the helm of MS-13 is coming to an end. DEA Acting Administrator Derek Moutz was even more direct in his assessment. With MS-13 now officially designated as a foreign terrorist organization, Moutz declared that the rules have changed, and so has the mission. He characterized Archaga Carrias not merely as a fugitive, but as a foreign terrorist waging war on innocent Americans through murder, trafficking, and terror. Moutz promised that under the current administration, authorities would dismantle MS-13 piece by piece, and anyone protecting Archaga Carrias would fall with him. The search for Archaga Carrias has involved multiple federal agencies. He appears on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, the DEA's most wanted list, and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Homeland Security Investigations, most wanted list. This unprecedented coordination reflects the seriousness of the threat he represents and the determination to bring him to justice. While investigators believe Archaga Carrias remains in Honduras, he has known ties to Houston, Texas, a city that has been identified as a major hub for MS-13 activity in the United States. The gang's extensive network means that information about Archaga Carrias could come from anywhere. Someone in the United States might have connections, might have heard something, might possess information that could lead to his capture. The FBI has made it easy for potential informants to come forward. Information can be provided through multiple channels, including WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, phone, and text at international numbers set up specifically for this case. The reward of $5 million, a life-changing sum of money, is designed to encourage anyone with knowledge of Archaga Carrias' whereabouts to take the risk of coming forward. Archaga Carrias is not the only MS-13 leader being pursued. The superseding indictment that charged him also names 4 other high-ranking gang members. David Campbell, also known as Viejo Dan and Don David, is currently in custody in the United States facing similar charges. Juan Carlos Portillo Santos, known as Juancy, is in custody in Honduras serving a lengthy prison sentence. Two others, Victor Eduardo Morales Zelia, known as Cuervo, and Jorge Alberto Velázquez Paz, known as Chacarin, remain at large. This investigation is being conducted as part of Joint Task Force Vulcan, a specialized unit focused on combating transnational criminal organizations. The task force represents a coordinated effort involving multiple federal agencies, state and local law enforcement, and international partners. It is a recognition that organizations like MS-13 cannot be defeated by traditional law enforcement methods alone. They require a comprehensive, sustained campaign. The designation of MS-13 as a foreign terrorist organization has given law enforcement additional tools to combat the gang. This designation allows for enhanced penalties, expanded surveillance capabilities, and greater international cooperation. It also sends a message that MS-13 is not merely a criminal gang, but an organization that poses a threat to national security. As of January 2026, Yulan Adne Archaga Carrias remains a fugitive. Somewhere in Honduras or perhaps hiding in another country, he continues to evade capture. But the net is closing. International cooperation is stronger than ever. Technology gives investigators tools that did not exist even a few years ago. And the $5 million reward means that someone, somewhere, might be motivated to provide the critical information that leads to his capture. If convicted of the charges against him, Archaga Carrias faces a maximum sentence of life in prison and a mandatory minimum sentence of 40 years. For a man who has spent his life wielding power through violence and fear, federal prison would represent the ultimate loss of control, a small, confined space where the power of MS-13 cannot reach. The case of Yulan Adne Archaga Carrias represents the evolving nature of criminal threats in the 21st century. He is not a lone wolf killer or a domestic criminal. He is a transnational terrorist leader, commanding a sophisticated organization that operates across borders. His capture will not end MS-13, but it will strike a significant blow against an organization that has caused immeasurable harm to communities across the Americas.
4 House Democrats visiting El Salvador, I know, as the party ramps up its efforts to return alleged MS-13 gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia back to the United States.
We're not the first here. We're not going to be the last members of Congress fighting and demanding the return of Abrego Garcia.
We have written a letter just as of 30 minutes ago to Secretary of State Marco Rubio demanding daily proof of life for Mr. Abrego Garcia. He is a father. He is a husband. He's a union member.
I am a mother. The idea that Kilmar was detained from in front of his 5-year-old son is heartbreaking to me.
This is on Donald Trump.
In an era of cryptocurrency mania and get-rich-quick schemes, one woman managed to pull off what the Times of London called one of the biggest scams in history. Ruja Ignatova, known as the Crypto Queen, convinced investors around the world to pour billions of dollars into a cryptocurrency called OneCoin. There was just one problem. OneCoin was not a cryptocurrency at all. It was an elaborate Ponzi scheme, and when the house of cards began to collapse, Ruja Ignatova simply vanished into thin air. Ruja Plamnova Ignatova was born on May 30, 1980, in Ruse, Bulgaria. Her family was of Romani heritage. Her father, Plamen, worked as a mechanical engineer, while her mother, Veska, was a nursery school teacher. Young Ruja grew up in a modest household, but she was clearly gifted intellectually. When the Iron Curtain fell in 1990, 10-year-old Ruja emigrated with her family to Germany. They settled in a small apartment in Schramberg, a town in southwestern Germany. It was here that Ruja would spend the remainder of her childhood, adapting to a new country, learning a new language, and dreaming of a future far more glamorous than her current circumstances. Ruja excelled academically, eventually becoming a highly educated entrepreneur. She pursued higher education with impressive credentials, eventually earning advanced degrees. She married Björn Strahl, a German lawyer, and in 2016 the couple welcomed a daughter. On the surface, Ruja appeared to have achieved the immigrant success story: educated, successful, starting a family. In 2014, as Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies were capturing public imagination, Ruja Ignatova founded OneCoin Limited, a Bulgaria-based company. She positioned herself as a visionary in the cryptocurrency space, traveling the world to promote OneCoin at elaborate events. She was charismatic, persuasive, and projected an image of success and sophistication. She wore expensive clothing, arrived in luxury vehicles, and spoke with the confidence of someone who had unlocked the future of finance. At packed events in major cities, Ruja would take the stage and paint a picture of revolutionary technology. OneCoin, she claimed, was the Bitcoin killer, a cryptocurrency that would surpass all others and make early investors incredibly wealthy. She showcased presentations filled with technical jargon about blockchain technology, mining, and decentralized finance. For people who did not fully understand cryptocurrencies, which was most of the population, it all sounded very impressive. The business model seemed simple. Investors would purchase packages of educational materials about cryptocurrency and receive tokens of OneCoin as part of the package. These coins could allegedly be mined and traded. Investors were encouraged to recruit others, creating a multi-level marketing structure where early participants made money from the investments of those who came after them. The fundamental lie at the heart of OneCoin was this: it was not a cryptocurrency. Real cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin operate on blockchain technology, a distributed, transparent ledger that anyone can verify. Every transaction is recorded and publicly available. The decentralized nature of true cryptocurrencies is what gives them value and security. OneCoin had no such blockchain. Behind the sophisticated presentations and technical language, OneCoin was simply a database controlled by Ruja and her associates. They could create or destroy coins at will. They determined the value. There was no mining in any meaningful sense, just people paying money for tokens that had no real value and could not actually be traded on any legitimate cryptocurrency exchange. When investors wanted to sell their OneCoin, they found it nearly impossible. The company created an internal exchange, but the ability to convert OneCoin to real currency was tightly controlled and often impossible. People who had invested thousands or even millions of dollars found themselves unable to access their money. Still, the company kept recruiting new investors, using their money to pay earlier investors and create the illusion of a working system. According to federal prosecutors, OneCoin defrauded victims out of more than $4 billion. $4 billion. To put that in perspective, it is more than the GDP of several small countries. The victims were spread across the world. Ordinary people who believed they were getting in early on the next Bitcoin, wealthy investors who thought they were diversifying their portfolios, and everyone in between. The scheme relied on creating false statements and representations about the nature of OneCoin. Ruja and her co-conspirators lied about the technology, lied about the value of the coins, and lied about the investment opportunity. They took advantage of people's desire for financial security, their fear of missing out on the cryptocurrency boom, and their trust in sophisticated marketing materials and polished presentations. As OneCoin grew, so did scrutiny from authorities. various financial regulators began investigating the company. Law enforcement agencies in multiple countries started building cases. The walls were closing in. On October 25, 2017, Ruja Ignatova boarded a Ryanair flight from Sofia, Bulgaria, to Athens, Greece. It was a routine flight, unremarkable in every way except for one crucial detail. Ruja Ignatova has not been seen since. She vanished completely. No confirmed sightings. No verified communications. Nothing. The timing of her disappearance was not coincidental. In October 2017, a federal grand jury indicted Ignatova, and the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York issued a warrant for her arrest. By February 2018, a superseding indictment was filed, charging Ignatova with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, conspiracy to commit securities fraud, and securities fraud. But by then, she was already gone. Federal authorities believe Ignatova knew the indictment was coming. Someone tipped her off, giving her time to flee before she could be arrested. On that October day, she walked onto a plane in Sofia and walked off into legend. On June 30, 2022, the FBI added Ruja Ignatova to the 10 most wanted fugitives list, replacing Octaviano Juarez Caro. She became only one of 12 women to ever appear on the list since its inception in 1950. The FBI initially offered a reward of up to $250,000 for information leading to her arrest. In June 2024, recognizing the difficulty in locating her, the reward was increased dramatically to $5 million through the Department of State's Transnational Organized Crime Rewards Program. The FBI has made extensive efforts to locate Ignatova. She may have traveled on a German passport. Investigators believe she could be in the United Arab Emirates, Bulgaria, Germany, Russia, Greece, or elsewhere in Eastern Europe. In 2022, the FBI launched an episode of its podcast and YouTube series, Inside the FBI, devoted entirely to Ignatova and the OneCoin case, hoping to generate leads from the public. An Interpol warrant has been issued by German authorities. In August 2024, a UK court ordered a global asset freeze for Ignatova and her OneCoin associates, an attempt to prevent the remaining stolen funds from being moved or hidden. The question that haunts this case is simple: is Ruja Ignatova still alive? FBI Special Agent Paul Roberts stated in a 2022 interview that the agency's investigation was operating under the assumption that she is still alive, noting they had no information to counter that belief. The FBI continues to actively hunt for her. However, disturbing reports have emerged suggesting a far darker fate. In 2023, the Bulgarian investigative journalism site Bureau of Investigative Reporting and Data published a bombshell report. According to Bulgarian police documents, a police informant overheard Georgi Vasilov, the brother-in-law of Bulgarian drug lord Christoforos Taki, saying, while intoxicated, that Ignatova was murdered in November 2018 on Taki's orders. The report alleged that Taki had initially sheltered Ignatova after her disappearance in 2017, presumably in exchange for payment from the billions she had stolen. But at some point, the relationship apparently soured. According to the informant's account, Ignatova was murdered aboard a yacht in the Ionian Sea. Her body was allegedly dismembered and thrown overboard. The alleged killer, Hristo Hristov, is currently serving time in a Dutch prison for drug trafficking. These reports have not been confirmed, and the FBI has not changed its approach to the investigation. Without a body or concrete evidence, law enforcement must continue to operate under the assumption that Ignatova could still be alive and in hiding. The $5 million reward remains in place, a powerful incentive for anyone with genuine information about her whereabouts or her fate. The story of Ruja Ignatova has captured international attention. In 2019, the BBC released a podcast series titled The Missing Crypto Queen, which investigated her disappearance and the OneCoin fraud. The podcast became a sensation, listened to by millions of people around the world. In 2022, journalist Jamie Bartlett published a book with the same title, providing an exhaustive examination of the case. What makes Ignatova's story so compelling is not just the scale of the fraud, but her complete disappearance. In an age of surveillance, facial recognition, and digital tracking, how does someone simply vanish? If she is alive, she has managed to evade one of the most intensive international manhunts in recent history. If she is dead, her killers have successfully hidden the evidence. While the mystery of Ruja's disappearance captivates the public, we must not forget the real tragedy: the victims. $4 billion stolen means millions of individual victims, many of whom lost their life savings. Some lost money they had borrowed, leaving them deeply in debt. Others convinced family and friends to invest, destroying relationships when the fraud was exposed. The FBI believes there may be more victims who have yet to be identified or who have not come forward. They encourage anyone who invested in OneCoin to contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. Even if the money cannot be recovered, documenting the full scope of the fraud is important for justice and for preventing similar schemes in the future. Some of Ignatova's co-conspirators have been arrested and convicted. Her brother, Konstantin, known as Konsti, was arrested and pleaded guilty to related charges. Others involved in OneCoin's operations have faced justice, but without Ruja herself in custody, there is no closure for the victims and no full accountability for the massive fraud. As of January 2026, the case of Ruja Ignatova remains one of the most baffling unsolved mysteries in the world of white-collar crime. Either she is alive and has successfully hidden for more than 8 years, living under a new identity and avoiding all contact with her previous life, or she met a violent end and became a victim herself of the criminal underworld she sought to exploit. The FBI continues to investigate. Tips can be provided through multiple channels, including Telegram and Signal at dedicated contact points set up specifically for the Ignatova case. The $5 million reward stands as testament to the seriousness with which authorities are pursuing this case. Whether Ruja Ignatova is hiding on a beach somewhere, living under an assumed name in a country without an extradition treaty, or whether her body lies at the bottom of the Ionian Sea, one thing is certain: she orchestrated one of the largest financial frauds in history, and justice has yet to be served. Until she is found, or until her fate is definitively determined, the Crypto Queen will remain one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives, a symbol of the new age of crime in the digital era. There is a certain irony, dark and undeniable, in the case of Mary Carol McDonnell. For years, she produced true crime television shows that dramatized fraud, deception, and financial crimes. She built a career on telling stories about criminals who preyed on others. Then, according to federal prosecutors, she became the very type of criminal she had spent years depicting. In one of the strangest twists in FBI Most Wanted history, the producer of shows like I Married a Murderer and It Takes a Killer found herself accused of orchestrating a fraud scheme that defrauded banks of nearly $30 million. Mary Carol McDonnell, now 73 years old, was the former chief executive officer of Bellum Entertainment, LLC, a production company based in Burbank, California. Bellum Entertainment was a significant player in the world of syndicated true crime programming. The company produced multiple popular shows that aired on cable networks and in syndication across the United States. Among Bellum's productions were shows with provocative titles: It Takes a Killer, I Married a Murderer, Corrupt Crimes and Murderous Affairs. These were the kinds of shows that filled afternoon and late-night television schedules, dramatizing real-life criminal cases with actor recreations, interviews with investigators, and dramatic narration. They were popular with audiences who had an appetite for true crime content. McDonnell was not just a producer, she was the company's leader, responsible for its operations, its finances, and its future. She worked with former police officers and FBI agents who appeared as experts on the shows. She employed dozens of workers in production roles. On the surface, she ran a legitimate, successful entertainment business. By 2017, Bellum Entertainment was experiencing serious financial problems. The company was struggling to meet payroll, falling behind on financial obligations, and facing mounting debts. Creditors filed civil complaints alleging that Bellum owed more than $1 million to various parties nationwide. For a company in the entertainment industry, a notoriously difficult business with narrow profit margins and unpredictable revenue, these financial troubles were serious but not necessarily unusual. What Mary Carol McDonnell did next, however, was far from ordinary. According to federal prosecutors, instead of restructuring the business, finding legitimate investors, or accepting bankruptcy, McDonnell decided to commit fraud on a massive scale. She concocted a scheme that would rival the plots of the crime shows her company produced. The scheme McDonnell allegedly devised relied on a simple but audacious lie. She claimed to be an heiress to the McDonnell Douglas fortune. McDonnell Douglas was a legendary American aerospace and defense company, founded by aviation pioneers James Smith McDonnell and Donald Wills Douglas. The company manufactured some of the most famous aircraft in history, from the DC-3 to military fighters like the F-4 Phantom and F-15 Eagle. In 1997, McDonnell Douglas merged with Boeing, creating one of the world's largest aerospace corporations. Mary Carol McDonnell was not related to this family. She had no connection to the aerospace fortune, but according to court documents, she approached the Bank of California claiming to be related to the founders of McDonnell Douglas. More than that, she claimed to have access to a trust account worth $28 million, money she could use as collateral for a loan. In 2017, based on these false representations, McDonnell obtained a loan of $14.7 million from the Bank of California. $14 million. It is unclear exactly how much due diligence the bank performed, or why they believed her claims without thoroughly verifying them. But McDonnell was a polished executive, well-spoken, with a successful business to her name. She likely presented documents that appeared legitimate. She may have had accomplices who helped substantiate the lie. The FBI alleges that McDonnell knew she was not entitled to the money. She knew she had no McDonnell Douglas Trust Fund. She knew the entire basis for the loan was fraudulent, and according to prosecutors, she never intended to repay it. The Bank of California fraud was apparently not an isolated incident. According to the FBI, McDonnell allegedly defrauded additional financial institutions in a similar fashion. The estimated total loss exceeds $15 million across these additional frauds. In some accounts, prosecutors put the total fraud at nearly $30 million. The exact details of these other frauds have not been fully disclosed publicly, as some investigations may be ongoing and some institutions may not have been named. But the pattern appears consistent. McDonnell allegedly approached financial institutions, made false statements about her wealth and family connections, and obtained large loans she knew she could never and would never repay. Some reports suggest McDonald's fraud extended beyond banks to include cast members of her shows, and even her own family members. Her nephew, who served as Bellum Entertainment's vice president for 10 years, quit in 2017, and later reported that the company owed him more than $10,000. He said he was unaware of any bank fraud, a claim that suggests McDonald may have been hiding the scheme even from those closest to her in business. In 2017, the California Labor Commission began investigating Bellum Entertainment for alleged non-payment of wages to dozens of its former workers. These workers included former police officers and FBI agents who had appeared as experts on Bellum's crime shows. When confronted about the non-payment, McDonald reportedly told her employees that the company had been the victim of significant bank fraud, a claim that now appears to have been a lie designed to cover up her own alleged fraud. As the Labor Commission investigation proceeded and financial institutions began to realize they had been defrauded, law enforcement became involved. The IRS Criminal Investigation Newark Field Office, working with the FBI and the United States Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, built a case against McDonald. In 2018, a federal grand jury indicted McDonald. In February of that year, a superseding indictment was issued, charging her with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, conspiracy to commit securities fraud, and securities fraud. On December 12, 2018, the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California issued a federal arrest warrant. When FBI agents went to arrest Mary Carol McDonald, she was gone. Like Ruja Ignatova, the crypto queen profiled earlier in this documentary, McDonald had vanished. She had apparently fled before authorities could take her into custody. For nearly 7 years, she has remained on the run. The FBI believes McDonald is currently in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Dubai has become a haven for fugitives from Western justice, as the UAE does not have an extradition treaty with the United States. The city's combination of luxury, secrecy, and lack of cooperation with U.S. law enforcement makes it an attractive destination for wealthy criminals seeking to avoid prosecution. If McDonald is indeed in Dubai, she is living there knowing she can never return to the United States without facing immediate arrest. She cannot see family members who remained in America. She cannot visit places from her former life. She is, in effect, living in a luxurious prison, free from jail cells but trapped by the consequences of her alleged crimes. On December 5, 2025, the FBI announced that Mary Carol McDonald had been added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. The announcement came from FBI New York, working with the United States Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, and the IRS Criminal Investigation Newark Field Office. McDonald was only the 12th woman to be added to the list since its creation in 1950. The FBI is offering a reward for information leading to her arrest, though the amount has not been publicly specified at the level of other cases on this list. What is clear is that federal authorities want McDonald back in the United States to face trial for her alleged crimes. McDonald also uses several aliases, including Mary Carol Carroll, Mary Carol McDonald, Mary Carol McDonald, Mary C. Carroll, and Mary Carol McDonald. This use of multiple names may help her evade detection, as financial and travel records might be under different identities. The irony of Mary Carol McDonald's case cannot be overstated. For years, she made her living producing shows about criminals, murderers, fraudsters, corrupt officials. She interviewed law enforcement officers, consulted with FBI agents, and dramatized cases of people who thought they could get away with crimes. Her shows often ended with the criminal being caught, justice being served, and a moral lesson about the consequences of criminal behavior. Now she finds herself the subject of the very type of story she used to produce. If she is captured, her case will likely be featured on crime shows, podcasts, and documentaries. The woman who created true crime content has become true crime content. There is also irony in the nature of her alleged crime. She claimed to be an heiress to an aviation fortune, a claim that was completely false. But in her entertainment career, she had built something real, a production company that created content, employed people, and generated revenue. If she had managed the company better, found legitimate financing, or accepted the reality of business failure, she would not be a fugitive. Instead, allegedly driven by pride, desperation, or greed, she threw away everything for a fraud that was always going to be discovered. As of January 2026, Mary Carol McDonnell remains at large. If she is in Dubai, as the FBI believes, she is likely living comfortably on the money she allegedly stole. Dubai offers luxury accommodations, fine dining, and all the amenities wealthy expatriates desire. But it also offers something less pleasant: isolation from her former life and the constant knowledge that she is wanted by federal authorities. The FBI continues to seek information about her whereabouts. Anyone with information is encouraged to contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit tips online at tips.fbi.gov. Even a small piece of information, a sighting, a financial transaction, a communication, could prove crucial to finally bringing McDonnell to justice. The case raises important questions about white-collar crime and accountability. McDonnell allegedly stole nearly $30 million through fraud, but she did not use a gun or physical violence. She used words, documents, and the trust of financial institutions. Yet the harm she caused is real. Banks lost money, employees went unpaid, and trust in financial systems was undermined. Her case reminds us that fraud can be as devastating as violent crime, even if the weapons are different. Unlike the crime shows Mary Carol McDonnell used to produce, her story does not yet have an ending. She has not been caught. Justice has not been served. The victims of her alleged fraud have not seen accountability. She remains in the wind, a fugitive from American justice. But the FBI has a remarkable track record of eventually catching fugitives on its 10 most wanted list. The 93% capture rate speaks to the persistence of investigators and the power of public awareness. McDonnell may be hiding in Dubai now, but circumstances change. Political relationships shift. Financial pressures mount. Someone who knows something decides the reward money is worth the risk of coming forward. When not if, but when Mary Carol McDonnell is finally brought to justice, her case will serve as a cautionary tale. It will be a reminder that no amount of cleverness, no amount of planning, and no amount of distance can permanently outrun the consequences of fraud. And perhaps most fittingly, her case will likely end up being featured on exactly the type of true crime show she once produced. A final, ironic twist in a story she never intended to be part of. The cases we have examined today tell us something important about human nature and society. They remind us that crime, in all its forms, causes real harm to real people. They demonstrate that justice, though sometimes slow, is persistent and patient. They show us that no matter how smart criminals think they are, no matter how far they run, and no matter how long they hide, the combined efforts of law enforcement and engaged citizens can eventually bring them to justice. These cases also remind us of the importance of international cooperation in an increasingly connected world. The capture of Castillo and Wedding in Mexico, the hunt for Archaga Carrias in Honduras, the search for Ignatova across multiple continents, and the belief that McDonnell is hiding in Dubai all demonstrate that modern criminal investigations transcend borders. Law enforcement agencies around the world must work together, share information, and coordinate operations to be effective. Finally, these cases serve as a deterrent. Every criminal who considers committing a serious crime should understand that there is no safe haven, no perfect hiding place, and no guarantee of escape. The FBI's most wanted list and its remarkable success rate send a clear message. You may run, but you cannot hide forever. You may evade capture for years, even decades, but the investigation will continue. The search will go on, and eventually, statistically speaking, you will be found. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the FBI's most wanted cases of 2026. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and remember that every one of us has a role to play in making our communities safer. This is Crime Case Vault, reminding you that justice may be delayed, but it is rarely denied.